About a week ago, I reported on an event that would be taking place at the Digipen Institute of Technology, hosted by an alum of that school who also happens to be a Valve employee of over 15 years. The only reason I reported on this event was because it was described on the school's website as having information on, quote, Valve's upcoming Flagship VR title. The talk finished yesterday, and it included some of the first official information on Valve's flagship virtual reality title that I will be referring to for the rest of the video as HLVR. Let's dive into everything that was learned at the event, everything that was learned during the Q&A, and then everything that was learned in the hallway Q&A that was conducted just kind of casually without any cameras around. At the beginning of the talk, Kerry Davis made sure to state that there would not be any product announcements or official product news. This definitely was made because of the hype that was drummed up by both me and different outlets like Upload VR, picking up on the fact that there will be some upcoming VR information in the Digipen's description of the talk.
I know it's unusual to put a bullet point for things that I will not be talking about, but I want to get all the disappointment out of the way right up front. If you wish to leave, please do so quietly. I won't hate you for it. I will not be making any product announcements, and I will not be sharing new details about projects currently in development. Believe me, I am dying to share all the exciting things that we've been working on at Valve. It's killing me, but today is not the time or the place for that, unfortunately.
The interesting thing is that Davis was kind of lying. No, there was no real announcement, but for about 40 minutes of this talk, Davis discussed doors. Now, you're going to hear a lot about virtual reality doors today, and we will get to the actual details of why that is, but I need to stress something up front. Davis did discuss the iterative process of creating virtual reality doors, and it just seemed like he was going on for no reason for like half an hour about doors. But it needs to be stressed, the only reason that happened was because Davis was trying to illustrate exactly how far of a shift in terms of design needs to be taken when designing specifically and natively for virtual reality. The door is just an illustration of how far designers need to go in order to be able to properly abstract interactions with everyday objects within virtual reality. Davis first opened the talk with how he got his job at Valve.
Summer of 2004, a local game company is working on finishing their big game project. It's called Half-Life 2. Now, I don't know if any of you have played Half-Life 2, but it's a massive game. And Valve, the company that made it, at this time is about 80 people. So they're all crunching to get this thing done. And they did something that's very out of character for Valve. And I want to emphasize, this is out of character. They do not do this in the past, they do not do this today. They decided to hire a couple of contractors to be full-time testers on this game and also manage their bug database, play test sessions, all that kind of stuff. So at the time, I'm at Digipen, and I'm actually grading for Matthew Mead's freshman CS class. So I bring in the last stack of assignments, and he says, hey, if you don't have plans for this summer, a company called over, they want us to send some students to interview for a summer job. Would you be interested? And I was like, sure. I hadn't heard of Valve, but I'm always open to some extra cash for the summer, so this sounds like a great idea. So, spoiler alert, I got the job. 2 of us were hired, and we spent that summer, probably one of the most amazing summers of my life, I have to say. I was pretty much 24 hours a day in the office playing this game. Fortunately, during that time, I got to know every one of those 80 employees personally. They were great people, very cool. So 2005, summer rolls around, I make a few calls. I said, you know, I'm getting kind of good at this programming thing. Maybe I could come in, just get a taste of what it's like to write code for an actual game company, see what that's like. They said yes. So I got to come in and I worked on the Xbox version of Half-Life 2. And I actually wrote code. I wrote some of the UI, the save load stuff, interface with the console, you know, all the stuff that you give the junior people that nobody else wants to do. I was happy to do it. End of the year rolls around, it's time for me to go back to school for my senior year. I got called into an office and they said, we'd like you to stay. They offered me a full-time job.
Davis then went into how, even though he is incredibly passionate about virtual reality development, a lot of people at Valve kind of hate developing for the platform for many reasons.
Why should you hate developing for VR? The reasons are there. First, There's a ton of new hardware coming out, which is great. It means the ecosystem is vibrant, it's alive, things are moving. Hopefully VR is here to stay. But standards are just starting to get nailed down. Compliance is a little bit wonky here and there, especially with controllers. So if you want to sell your games to a wide audience, you have to have all this junk sitting on your desk so you can test it with all this equipment. So I have multiple HMDs, head-mounted displays, on my desk. I have 6 or 7 sets of controllers from different manufacturers. Everything needs to be charging all the time. So there's cords everywhere, HMD cables, they're hanging over the sides, they're wrapped around your chair. Not a day goes by I don't get up from my desk and kick something off and possibly break it. So that can be very frustrating. Motion discomfort, a lot is said about getting motion sick from playing in VR. Developers and hardware manufacturers both are really doing a good job of finding ways to mitigate this problem, and it's getting better and better. I'm very sensitive to it, and I rarely get sick anymore. But when you're developing for VR, you're running debug code, which is very slow. You're running assets that haven't been optimized, so they're very slow. You're often looking at a frame rate of 12 to 14 frames, and that is not going to work in VR. You're going to get very sick. You learn to work around it with a lot of caution, but it's tough. And if it goes bad, your whole day is wasted.
Then we got into the talk about doors. Davis went into specific detail on 4 different iterations of a door model that players were to interact with in order to be able to just open and close doors. To begin with, he stated that all the interactions were based around the robust physics engine of Source.
Secondly, we're going to use Valve's Source engine. If you don't know, Source is the name of the game engine that Valve has used to build all of their games since Half-Life. And it's evolved over the years. At some point along the way, we slapped a 2 at the end of it, but it's still Source.
So, calm down. HLVR is not being developed on the Source engine. This is Source 2. However, this does raise a few questions. Internally, is the structure of the Source 2 engine just so similar to Source that they have no reason of shipping tools in the first place? Is this one of the reasons why we have not seen the full Source 2 development kit? 4 iterations of doors were shown.
What you'd expect. All right, seems pretty good. Now latched. You can close the door. Finally. See if the hinge works. Yep, the constraint makes sense. And throw the door closed. Good. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. Handle. There we go, the latch is changing, just like we wanted. All right, very nice. I don't know if you noticed the creaking on that. I'm not talking about it today, but our sound designers do some really cool stuff. It used to be the door just opens and you just play a sound. It plays for as long as the door animates and you're fine. In this case, the player can be standing there swinging the door back and forth. The sound needs to match that, so they actually have a way to play the creak sound. You can change the pitch, the volume based on how fast the door is moving. It's really cool stuff. So when our Flagship VR project is released, I hope you'll go around to some doors and play with the sound.
Something I want to point out, all of the sounds you're hearing are likely the current versions of the sounds, as all of these quote-unquote prototypes you're seeing are likely just reconstructed versions for visual purposes. These sounds are brand new. These are not Half-Life 2 sounds. They sound like Half-Life 2 sounds, but they are all brand new. And then Davis has a small side note about how developing virtual reality interactions to also be interactable with non-playable characters is a huge, difficult process.
How do NPCs interact with physics doors? They've been interacting with classic doors fine. What do they do here? If there's an NPC standing in the doorway and you want to close the door, With the classic door, we just ignore that key press. No, we're not going to close it. There's something in the way. In VR, you can't do that.
Thus confirming the game that we are talking about has non-playable characters. And then the talk went into a question and answer, and that section was over an hour long if you include the casual Q&A that took place out in the hallway following the official talk. Now, before we get to what was learned during the Q&A, I want to stress a couple things. One of the major fears that have been described to me through developers and leaks over the last 2 years related to HLVR was that it seemed as if Valve was very much in an old mindset in regards to interactive objects in virtual reality. If anybody has been playing virtual reality for a while, you've likely noticed a dramatic shift in what is considered standard. Back in 2016, most of what you had were very similar to Job Simulator or The Lab, where you just had floating hands, and all the surfaces could just be phased through. None of the objects actually had any legitimate physics models. Flash forward to something like Blades and Sorcery and Boneworks taking over the mindset of all virtual reality gamers, and now we know that the average person wants to be able to have full physics models on everything, where objects will interact with other objects in the way that they would in the real world. And it seems as if Valve is taking that seriously. However, they have the research and development resources to be able to test every single detail to such a fine degree that just introducing a physics model to everything is not the final answer. Polishing and testing everything to make the comfort level of the player the most important seems to be the design philosophy overall. So we still have something akin to a Boneworks type physics system, but with a significant amount of focus being put on player comfort. Now, I will be going into exactly why this is and exactly what this will mean in terms of a first-person shooter Half-Life experience in a video that will be out very soon called All You Need to Know About HLVR, but that will be later, and with that said, let's move on to what was learned during the question and answer. First of all, Davis stated that all of the work that was put into the doors took place over quite a few months, and it was not his main focus.
The weird thing about this business is time sort of doesn't exist in general. If you told me how long I've been doing something, I might say 3 months and then look back at the record and see that it was 3 years. I'm gonna say that from day one to getting to what our final implementation was, without the solving the problems, just building it out was maybe a month, I would say, to get to the final version. In actual me time, yeah. And I kind of glossed over, like, these were very simple incremental changes, but in reality, there's pages and pages, hundreds of lines of code behind all of that to actually run the logic and drive it. It looks super simple from the outside, but there's actually quite a bit that happens inside there. So it took time to get everything working. But then the solutions, that took a little while. I was resistant. I wasted time not wanting to do the things that it seemed like were the only way to fix it. I wanted to find better solutions.
He did state that the doors were one of the easier problems to solve. Davis stressed many times throughout the talk that even though Valve has a stigma of shelving projects quite frequently, what they are currently working on, A, has a deadline, B, they are incredibly proud of already, and C, will without a doubt release.
We definitely try to avoid the sunk cost fallacy and say, well, we put 5 years into this, so we have to finish it. I guess there have been things that we've worked on for, on the scale of a year or more that we decided to set aside. We never really throw something out completely because it's a lot of good work that maybe someday we want to go back to. So yeah, it's kind of up to the team. As far as deciding when it's good enough to go out, that's absolutely the team's decision. Once we've decided we're going to ship this VR game, right? So it's really up to the people that are working on it to say, yes, we're happy with it, we're proud of this, we want people to play it. If we're not proud of it, we don't want people to play it, and we're going to make sure that we are proud of it before we let you. And I know that that's frustrating. It's frustrating for us too. It's just it's the benefit that we have at Valve that we can just keep working until it's the way we want it. It's also kind of the curse of not having a producer breathing down your neck every day telling you, no, you have to ship by this date or all your money's gone. So it's a mixed blessing.
Now that said, somebody actually did ask if this game is still shipping sometime in 2019, a year that is quickly coming to an end.
I do not know. And that is an honest answer because, like I said, Valve is a very autonomous department. That is not my choice to make, and I haven't been in the meetings that are making that decision. My daily goal at Valve is to keep pushing the project forward, writing code, fixing bugs, making it awesome. And the day will come where the word will come to the office and they'll say, okay, we're announcing tomorrow. And that's when I'll know about it. So I honestly can't answer.
Now, before anybody reads too far into this, this likely means that he doesn't know when Valve will be announcing HLVR, not the final release date. Davis stated multiple times he is working under a known deadline. So it's very likely that someone like Gabe Newell will know exactly when things are moving forward. But someone like Davis, who is so deep within the design and mechanics of the game, just doesn't worry himself with the logistics of release, just to not distract himself. During the hallway Q&A, a couple interesting questions were asked. Number one, he was asked if he watched Valve News Network, to which he stated, he watches me a lot, and my videos are shared around in the office all the time, to the point where there is an email chain with a lot of people in the office where my videos are posted regularly and are discussed in detail. So, if you're a Valve employee who found this video in an email list, hello, please send me an email once the game is announced. I'd love to interview you. Davis then was asked a question that led to information on what is essentially a new game plus for HLVR. He said that there was a pretty big skill curve for the game due to it being fully in VR and not everybody being used to it. A lot of the playtesters said that their first playthrough was a lot better by the end, once they got used to the mechanics and controls, and they started to have significantly more fun. So a large goal of the team is to encourage players to play this entire game multiple times and introduce new mechanics to incentivize replays. Once he got into that, he stopped himself and stated he likely said too much about it. Davis also stated that the Boneworks developers at Stress Level 0, being people like Brandon and Alex, have been over at Valve's offices many times. And in fact, he has played their stuff and they have played Valve's stuff.
Have you heard of Boneworks?
Those guys are at the office all the time. Yes, we know them very well. They have played our stuff, we play their stuff, yeah.
The question is raised. There obviously was a significant shift towards some physical-based interactions within the game within the last year and a half. How much did Boneworks have to do in encouraging that shift internally in Valve's own design? And lastly, since this is a school full of game development students, somebody asked, how do you get hired at Valve? To which Davis said,
in general, Valve looks for at least 10 years of industry experience. That's mainly because we do not have a good mentoring structure in place. Valve is a very autonomous, every employee is kind of on their own. That doesn't mean we don't work as a group and team, but you're responsible for your work. So you need to be able to come into the company and just, like I said, hit the ground running and be successful. So that's why we look for industry experience. The main thing is just do the work as much as you can. You know, working at other companies if you can, build that experience. If you're not getting jobs in the industry, do stuff on your own, making mods, download Unity, make your own games. If you spent 5 years just making games yourself, that might be enough because you've built up a skill set and you have a portfolio that you can show. So that's really it. Valve is we have to have people that have a lot of experience because we kind of leave them on their own. So, you know, new students straight out of college are really going to flounder in that environment.
Something that I want to add, Valve has stated numerous times that they hate it when people do not apply because they don't feel like they deserve to work there. Davis's response would likely turn a lot of the students in that room off from applying. But here's the deal. Even if you don't have 10 years of industry experience, you should still apply and let Valve figure out if you're Valve material. You have to remember the person that made Moondust and that new lab hands-on demo is like younger than me, like 19 or 20. So there is still a chance for anybody to work there. And don't let Davis turn you off from trying to achieve your dreams. I want to be able to thank everybody that has made the information in this video obtainable and possible. This talk was officially recorded by Digipen, but according to the people filming it, it was only going to be available for the students themselves. Digipen, if you're listening to this, put the talk up on YouTube. I want to be able to thank Garrett Davis and Alex Hart for live tweeting the entire event and making my live stream reporting of it interesting. I also want to be able to thank everybody that was able to record both audio and video and send that my way. Without you guys, this video would be incredibly boring. Now, remember, I've only shown you about 10% of what was actually said and shown at the talk. Seriously, I've cut out a lot just to make this video under 20 minutes, and it's probably over that. There's a lot there, and you really should listen to it. Link down below. If you want to be able to watch the recording of the live reporting live stream I did when this talk was going on, it will also be down in the description below on my second channel, once again, Valve News Extra. Finally, I want to thank Kerry Davis for actually taking the time out of his incredibly busy schedule and incredibly crunchy time he's having right now in order to be able to finish HLVR by his deadlines to talk to us. I got the impression through the talk that he was aware that more than just students were very interested in what he had to say. And to be completely honest, what he said was so valuable. This is the first legitimate bits of information on HLVR we have ever received. It means that the majority of the leaks we have been reporting on for years have been accurate, and it also means that we are going to be playing our first Half-Life game in over a decade in only a few months. I need to stress that Davis is a programmer and a designer, so his entire talk was about how detailed everyone is with interactable objects and the environment as a whole, and how all of it ties together from a mechanical standpoint. I imagine that all of the sound designers, level designers, writers, artists are going through the exact same level of detail with their work. This is going to be an insane game. And we're going to be talking about everything that I know about it in very fine detail very soon. I've been working on this report for over a year, and it's almost finished. And from what I know, I can honestly say this will be the biggest thing to ever happen to Valve News Network, likely ever. If you want to be able to follow up on all of the topics I cover on this channel in real time, check out my Twitter page, linked down in the description below. It's at Valve News Network. If you're confused about anything, if you have a question about anything, my DMs on Twitter are always open, and my email is down in the description below. If you want to be able to support these videos, my Patreon page is also down in the description below, and thank you very much for watching. I'm Tyler McVicker. This is Valve News Network. Have a good day. Adios.